Hello to all dear Manhwa fans. I hope you're having an amazing day. Before we begin, I want to send a very special shout out to everyone who left comments on the previous video. A big shout out to Dita Roland P8F, who was the first to comment, our fastest follower. Thank you so much. Now, without further ado, let's dive into this incredible recap. The next day, as Yunbin was leaving his apartment, something caught him off guard. Nara was there, her face partially hidden by the hood of her sweatshirt. Nervously, she greeted him and explained that she had forgotten to ask for his number the day before. However, she didn't realize that she was looking in the wrong direction. Yunbin pointed it out, making her even more flustered. In her confusion, she stumbled, accidentally getting closer to him. Embarrassed, Nara quickly apologized and said she would come back later to ask again. This left Yunbin wondering what was up with that woman. The following morning, while walking down the street, Yunbin spotted Nara at the corner, checking her phone. He wondered if she hadn't mentioned that she would start working next week or if he should greet her. As he passed by, he asked if she was heading somewhere, startling her. She barely knew him, yet this kept happening. Again the next day and the day after that. Even when he was at home, every time he stepped outside for a smoke, she seemed startled. This started to annoy Yunbin. He concluded that she was only getting flustered because of his presence. To avoid any awkwardness, he tried not to interact with her. But against his own intentions, he began noticing her more and more, reinforcing his belief that dealing with people was nothing but a hassle. One day, Nara tried to say something to him, but Yunbin, after putting out his cigarette, simply told her his full name, Yang Yunbin, since he had never actually introduced himself. Nara thanked him, calling him Yusi, a term used to address an older man. At that moment, General Sugata, his cat, let out a meow, but Yunbin was still processing why she had called him that. He knew he had a youthful face, so being addressed as an older man stung a little. Realizing her mistake, Nara quickly apologized, but Yunbin asked her to stop, saying it was embarrassing and that she was just messing with him. She explained that it was just a habit since she always felt like she was a bother to others, even when she didn't mean to be. Hearing that, Yunbin thought to himself that she did indeed give off that impression. Nara then asked if he wouldn't be talking to General that day, mentioning that she often heard him chatting with his cat. This made Yunbin realize she had been listening to his conversations, though he didn't think much of it and decided he would stop doing it altogether. At that moment, Nara let out a small sound of disappointment, which confused him. Intrigued, he asked what that noise was and if she actually enjoyed hearing someone complain about their miserable life. Embarrassed, Nara confessed that, strange as it might seem, she found it amusing to listen to him talk. She added that she wanted to learn more about people, but her shyness and dull personality had always kept her isolated, leaving her with no one to talk to. That was why she enjoyed listening to others, even in this way. She quickly clarified that she was telling him this so he wouldn't misunderstand. Just then, General stared at Yunbin, who took the opportunity to tell Nara that, whether she liked it or not, starting next week, she would have to meet a lot of people anyway. Though he didn't know exactly what kind of person she was, seeing her make an effort to connect with others made him think that she was far better at it than he was. As an employee, he believed that she had the ability to truly connect with real people. However, he decided to change the subject since he found the things she said a bit strange. In the end, he admitted that she had secretly listened to him, and although he was curious about her story, he had used his cat as an excuse. Nara tried to respond but couldn't find the right words. Just then, General returned and jumped straight onto her face, knocking her to the ground. Surprised, Yunbin wondered how he hadn't noticed this noisy duo in the past month. He asked Nara if she was okay, and she assured him she was fine. He then bid her farewell, wishing her luck on her first day at work. But before he could leave, Nara stopped him to remind him that he still hadn't given her his number. In his mind, Yunbin couldn't understand how someone could take 2 days just to ask for a phone number, but he admired her persistence. Finally, he began dictating his number to her, not thinking much of it, assuming she had only asked because of the cat. Meanwhile, as Nara showered, she reflected on how heavy her thoughts and emotions often felt, yet somehow she had enjoyed talking with him that day. As she had suspected, Yunbin turned out to be much more approachable than he seemed, which made her think it wouldn't be so bad to call him from time to time. That night, Nara kept looking at Yunbin's contact on her phone. It made her happy because she wanted to get closer to him and know him better. A week later, Yunbin arrived at Nara's apartment to feed General. When the kitten finished eating, she looked more than satisfied. Yunbin thought she might have eaten too much and doubted whether she'd want to go for a walk. But since the little one showed no interest, he decided to stay inside and didn't go out for a smoke either. As he reflected, he realized that a whole week had passed since Nara started working. He noticed that lately she seemed less nervous around him. She kept sending him funny pictures and jokes, which he interpreted as an attempt to get to know him better. He had even heard from others how kind Nara was, though he found it a bit suspicious. Eubin wanted to understand why she acted this way, but tried not to overthink it. Still, he couldn't help but wonder what motivated someone like her to approach someone like him. Maybe it was just because of the cat, which would be the most obvious explanation. That's why he decided not to get too close to her. As he petted General, he jokingly called him a monster, blaming him for the situation. Meanwhile, at the office, Nara was having a rough day. She felt so exhausted that she occasionally thought about disappearing. All morning, she had been unable to complete a report and kept making mistakes. This led to the team leader kicking her out, leaving her with the feeling that her brain simply wasn't working. Even though she was an adult, she felt useless and wished she could vanish. Before she could do anything impulsive, a coworker suddenly approached her. Startled, Nara let out such a loud scream that everyone in the office thought there was a deer inside. Turning to see who had scared her, she realized it was Joe Yosin, the section chief. Yosin quickly apologized, explaining that she hadn't meant to startle her. Still nervous, Nara assured her it wasn't her fault, admitting that she was just very easy to scare. When asked why she was looking for her, Yosin explained that she felt bad after seeing how the deputy chief had yelled at her and wanted to invite her for a coffee. Nara felt a bit embarrassed, but admitted that she could only drink decaf, otherwise her heart would race and anxiety would take over. Yosin understood, but Nara's imagination started playing tricks on her. She convinced herself that her boss was probably thinking that young people these days were failures and that back in her time, if a superior offered them something, they accepted it, even if it was poison. Suddenly, in a panic, Nara blurted out that she would take the coffee anyway. This left Yosin confused, reminding her that she had just said she couldn't drink it. But Nara insisted, thinking that maybe this would be her last cup of coffee. Faced with this situation, Yosin concluded that she should choose her words more carefully in the future. Once things had calmed down, she reassured Nara not to be discouraged, assuring her that the deputy chief always said unpleasant things. Nara sincerely thanked her, and then Yosin suggested that she offer the deputy chief a coffee. According to her, no matter how irritable he was, he wouldn't be able to refuse a kind gesture from a new team member. Although Nara wasn't sure if that was the right approach, her boss insisted she should give it a try when the opportunity arose. In her mind, Nara admired how kind and mature Yosin was, considering her an incredible person. When Yosin asked if she was ready to return to the office, Nara felt more encouraged. Before going in, her boss reminded her about something happening after work. A bit confused, Nara asked if she was referring to the team dinner, and Yosin confirmed it was. It was Nara's official welcome since they hadn't been able to organize it earlier due to their busy schedules. Yosin's excitement was evident, as it had been a while since they'd had this kind of gathering. She then asked Nara if she would be able to drink later. On her way home, Nara felt a little dizzy. Her limit was 2 drinks, and she had clearly reached it. She just wanted to get home and sleep, but she was also quite thirsty. As she searched through her pockets, she found a can of coffee she didn't remember taking. However, upon closer inspection, she recalled that Yosin had given it to her. Assuming it was herbal tea, she decided to drink it. Meanwhile, Eubin was checking his messages with Nara. She had only thanked him for looking after her cat so late and promised to call when dinner was over. However, even though he had sent a few messages, she hadn't responded. Eubin figured he had already spent enough time taking care of General and wondered if he should leave before Nara returned. But the kitten meowed, as if asking him to stay. He told her he had already spent the whole day with her and that her owner would be back soon. Saying goodbye to General, he prepared to leave. As he opened the door, he found Nara standing there. She was visibly unsteady and leaned against him, leaving him completely baffled. She didn't seem to recognize him, and he awkwardly asked her to stand up. However, she continued to lean on him, making him even more nervous. Eubin started to wonder how much she had actually drunk. He couldn't believe what was happening. He tried to push her away and shouted for her to wake up, but then he noticed something strange. Nara wasn't dizzy from alcohol. Concerned, he asked if she was sick or what was wrong. In a weak voice, she asked for help, saying it felt like her chest was about to burst. At that moment, Nara desperately pleaded with Eubin to help her, explaining that her heart felt like it was about to explode. This alarmed him, and he tried to calm her down so she wouldn't panic. Even though he wasn't sure what exactly was happening, he asked her to come inside so he could check on her. Nara was breathing heavily, and Eubin wanted to know if she had eaten anything strange at the team dinner. When he asked, her response frustrated him, and he clarified that he wasn't talking about the food. At that moment, Yunbin started to suspect that Nara wasn't fully aware of what she was saying. He suggested that if she was feeling that bad, she should go to the hospital, but she sadly refused. She explained that aside from being expensive, the idea scared her. This made Yunbin question whether her condition was truly serious, but then he saw her looking at him with pleading eyes, asking him to stay with her for a while. Despite feeling nervous and knowing he should refuse, after all, he had decided not to get involved in other people's lives, he finally gave in, though he cursed himself internally. He asked Nara what else he could do for her. A little later, Yunbin ended up giving her a shoulder massage, something she had requested. While doing so, he asked how she was feeling and noticed she was still trembling slightly. In his mind, he couldn't help but think about how soft Nara was and how small and delicate she seemed, as if her muscles could give way at any moment. What caught his attention the most was the pleasant scent she gave off. At that moment, Nara told him she was feeling a little better and mentioned how warm his hands were. Feeling slightly flustered, Yunbin asked if she could put on something else, as he was starting to feel uncomfortable. However, she reminded him that she still felt tightness in her chest. This led her to ask if his discomfort was because he found her unpleasant. Her question left Yunbin confused. Nervously, he thought that Nara wasn't in the right state of mind and that this wasn't what he had meant at all. He explained that she might feel embarrassed later when she remembered all of this, but he added that he had never thought anything bad about her. If anything, he found her cute. These words made Nara nervous, while Yunbin immediately wondered what he had just said. He had blurted it out without thinking. Hearing him, Nara stared at him intently, as if trying to confirm he was telling the truth. Then she asked if that was the case. Could she finally let out the feelings she had been holding inside? At this, Yunbin asked her directly what she was talking about, or if she was so out of it that she was just rambling. However, Nara assured him that she wasn't feeling dizzy, just a bit self-conscious. She explained that it was uncomfortable for her to keep suppressing her emotions. When she asked if he wouldn't make fun of what she was about to say, she began to let out a small part of the feelings she had been holding back. For her, it was a great relief. Meanwhile, Yunbin stood frozen, unsure of what to do. He wondered what was happening or if he should stop her. Yet, in his eyes, she looked incredibly beautiful. At one point, Nara started feeling lightheaded, which immediately worried Yunbin. He asked if she needed to lie down and offered to help her get to her bed. A few minutes later, already lying down, Nara quickly fell asleep, something Yunbin thought was the best decision. As he watched her, he realized she had probably had too much to drink. But what truly caught his attention was that someone as shy as her had said all those things. The memory made his face flush. Despite wanting to stay composed, he felt as if his own body was betraying him. Instinctively, he leaned in slightly, drawn by her scent. It was a mix of her perfume and her natural fragrance, slightly sharp yet refreshing, which, to Yunbin, meant she was healthy. The subtle hint of perfume was wonderful to him, and he couldn't help but notice her natural beauty, which stood out even more as she slept. The combination of her presence and scent made him feel strangely at ease. However, he soon noticed something else. The source of the scent was coming from a particular spot, her underarm. The faint acidity of the smell caught him off guard, but at the same time, it made him reflect on how absurd his thoughts were. Feeling embarrassed, he cursed himself for having such ridiculous ideas. He knew these thoughts likely stemmed from his frustration with loneliness, and he couldn't understand his own actions. Watching someone sleep wasn't right, and he was fully aware of it. That's why he whispered an apology to Nara and decided he couldn't stay any longer. Just as he was about to leave, Nara called his name, making him blush and turn around immediately. He asked if she wasn't asleep, to which she replied that she had only closed her eyes for a few seconds. Yunbin couldn't believe it. In his mind, he felt completely doomed. Nervously, he apologized for losing his composure for a moment. But Nara, with a calmness that unsettled him, reassured him that it was fine. And before he could respond, she asked him not to go. She wanted him to stay with her a little longer. At that moment, both Nara and Yunbin fell into silence. The boy, for his part, was visibly flushed. Normally, in a situation like this, he would have left immediately, but this time, he hadn't. That's why he asked Nara if she was okay, or if she still felt comfortable. She nodded and added that being with him made her feel more at ease. After a while, Nara was resting her head on Yunbin's shoulder. It was then that a question popped into her mind. With curiosity, she asked why he had smelled her earlier. The question made Yunbin nervous, and he admitted that, for a brief moment, he had lost his composure. Nara said she had found it a little surprising, But Yunbin added that he had simply noticed a pleasant scent and, without realizing it, had leaned in too much. Even so, he apologized. Then Nara asked if he knew what her nickname had been in high school. Yunbin, intrigued, shook his head, not understanding the sudden question. Nara explained that they used to call her Sweat Pocket, because back then she had been quite chubby and her body would sweat excessively, even in very uncomfortable areas. Both boys and girls had constantly teased her with that nickname. That's why she still felt embarrassed sometimes, even with the scented pads she occasionally used, and especially about her body odor. Yuman remained silent, realizing he had never known any of this. He had no idea how to comfort her. However, Nara continued, explaining that for the first time she felt as though those insecurities had turned into a blessing. Hearing this, Yunbin asked why she saw it that way. She responded that it was because he had told her she smelled good. At that moment, Nara gathered the courage to ask if he wanted to smell her a little more, specifically her natural fragrance. A little later, Yuman was close to Nara, who, in her mind, acknowledged that he was actually smelling her. It made her feel somewhat embarrassed because she found him charming. Despite seeing him as someone big and strong, she couldn't help but think of him as a small pet. Meanwhile, Yunbin felt flustered when Nara placed her hand on his head. This prompted him to ask her something directly, and she, blushing, agreed to answer. Yuman asked why she was trying to get closer to him. From his perspective, it could be interpreted as a sign of insecurity. He admitted that he didn't think he had the capacity or the right to take care of someone else, as he had already given up on his own life. Meanwhile, Nara still had a bright future ahead of her. He couldn't understand why someone like her would try to get close to someone like him. Hearing those words, Nara thought they sounded incredibly sad. Then a new question arose in Yunbin's mind. Was she doing all this out of sympathy? The question took Nara by surprise, but even though she was nervous, she firmly denied it. She explained that it wasn't out of pity, but because she was genuinely interested in him. She also pointed out that it wasn't true that Yunbin was entirely indifferent to her. Hearing this, Yuman fell into deep thought. He realized that his initial question hadn't really been for Nara, it had been for himself. He didn't understand what was happening to him or why he wasn't setting boundaries. Instead, he kept moving forward alongside her. He wondered if they both felt the same way, but he wanted to be sure. That's why he asked her directly if she wanted to get even closer to him. The question completely caught Nara off guard. After a while, Nara's cat woke up upon hearing her owner's laughter. It came from Yuman, who was eating some bread he had found. Although Nara felt a little strange, the cat watched as if accepting the whole situation. As she observed him eating, Nara directly asked if he really liked her scent that much. Yuman, smiling, replied that she was acting very shy, considering how far they had already come. A little embarrassed, Nara admitted that she hadn't taken a bath. However, for Yunbin, that wasn't a problem. In fact, he liked it. Then he asked what she thought and if she would agree to get even closer. When Nara remained silent, Yunbin jokingly told her not to tease him too much. After everything that had happened, she had basically given him permission for anything. That night, as Kim began preparing for the ceremony, he attempted to use a jutsu to help the girl relax. Everything was carefully observed by her little feline general, while Nara, visibly flustered by the situation, tried to maintain her composure. Kim questioned her upon noticing a deep corruption overflowing from within her, despite having barely used the technique. However, he could see how she reacted to every new method he applied. Seeing her so timid, he apologized, feeling that he couldn't continue with the preparations. Nara, for her part, immediately regretted it, remembering the promise she had made to herself. Yet she still couldn't stop trembling. Because of this, Kim asked if she wanted him to stop, as he didn't want her to feel pressured. However, that wasn't what Nara meant. She wanted to continue, especially because she longed to be near him. At this, Kim simply commented that with words like that, anyone could misinterpret the situation. Even so, he ended up apologizing for his behavior. At that moment, Nara was taken aback and tried to stop him before he went to grab a Danonino. She questioned what he was doing, especially since she knew he was messy, reminding him that he hadn't taken a bath yet. Kim admitted she was right, but he commented that it didn't really bother him. Besides, he actually liked those kinds of things. After that, he began eating his Danonino, making Nara feel even more embarrassed about everything that was happening, to the point where she kept repeating to herself how humiliating the moment was. However, Kim continued enjoying his snack until, distracted, Nara accidentally spilled the holy water she had been holding. Kim had expected it. He could already tell that the corruption in her heart was so obvious that it caused her to make mistakes. When he turned to look at her, He saw Nara covering her face in shame, unable to meet his gaze, especially because she was beginning to cry. Concerned, Kim asked if she was crying, and that was when she started sobbing, making him nervous, as he didn't understand the reason for her sudden tears. Through her sniffles, Nara admitted that this was her first ceremony, and she was so embarrassed that she wanted to disappear. She also asked him to stop, even though Kim had never heard her say something like that before. Still, he apologized for what he was doing. Then, Nara asked him to show her something, leaving Kim confused since he didn't understand what she meant. She continued explaining that she wanted to see him pray. She wanted to witness how he did it. Her words left Kim lost in thought. A little later, Kim apologized to Nara. Even though she had asked to watch, she still kept covering her face, which might make others uncomfortable. However, she couldn't help but feel embarrassed when she saw the chalice in front of her. Nara was once again surprised as she focused on the chalice, prompting Kim to joke that if she kept reacting that way, she might break a world record. But in her mind, she couldn't stop thinking about how massive it seemed, especially since it was always held by a man. It made her feel a bit uneasy. She wondered how they managed to hide something like that. It was hard for her to believe. Then she noticed the chalice's glow intensifying whenever she touched it. She wondered if that radiance was a result of Kim's desire to pray, and whether in some way it was her fault. She even questioned whether someone like her could find the path to God with his help. Finally, Nara spoke directly to Kim, asking if the chalice was glowing that way because of her. The question left him completely puzzled, as the answer seemed quite obvious to him. Still feeling uncertain, she insisted, asking if a girl like her could have a ceremony. Kim didn't fully understand what she meant, but if that was what she wanted, he saw no reason why it couldn't be done. Just then, the chalice began to shine even brighter, catching both of their attention. Nara panicked for a moment, thinking it was alive, but Kim reassured her that it was merely a reflection. That's when he asked if she was seriously questioning everything now. If she truly wanted to know, he assured her that a ceremony was entirely possible. However, he was more honest with her and admitted that he wanted to conduct the ritual, though he had no intention of insisting too much on the matter. Still, he acknowledged that without a rosary or the necessary elements, it would be quite difficult. Before he could say anything else, Nara interrupted, saying it was fine as long as she took certain precautions against blessings. She also reassured him that they were in a safe period for the ceremony. Finally, she nodded in agreement, accepting to go through with the ritual. Then, they finished preparing for the ceremony, but Nara was visibly nervous. Upon seeing her, Eubin thought she looked truly stunning. He wondered if she had always been this beautiful. At that moment, Nara spoke to him, and when he realized she was asking him to hurry, she was so embarrassed that she felt like she could die from it. Deciding to wrap up the final preparations, Eubin noticed that the corruption in Nara was intensifying. He realized that this situation was actually strengthening his faith. With that in mind, he prepared to read the first passage from the Bible. Nara felt as if something had touched her heart. It was an unfamiliar sensation, especially because it seemed like her soul was beginning to react. Sensing her unease, Eubin gently told her to relax, as her restless heart was preventing them from moving forward. Embarrassed, she apologized, explaining that it wasn't something she could control. In his mind, Eubin found her a bit frustrating, but instead of saying anything, he leaned in and pressed a few soft kisses to her neck. Nara was startled and told him that it tickled, but at the same time, she couldn't do anything about it. Her mind went blank as she felt her strength leaving her body. Taking advantage of this, Eubin began reading the first passage, leaving Nara completely stunned. She wondered what this strange sensation was. Noticing her reaction, Eubin asked how she was feeling, but she remained silent as tears welled up in her eyes. Seeing that she was about to cry again, he gently kissed her, calming her down. Once she had composed herself, he told her he would continue reading the Bible, which made Nara blush so much that she couldn't respond. Even so, Eubin read at a slow pace, struggling due to the overwhelming corruption surrounding Nara. Meanwhile, Nara began to feel a sharp pain in her heart, but Eubin reassured her that it was normal and that she would get used to it soon. So, they continued with their prayers. In his mind, Eubin acknowledged that he was truly holding a ceremony with Nara, his neighbor. His own deep-seated sins weighed heavily on him, something he had expected, given that this was his first ceremony. No one would have imagined they would reach this point, especially with her. However, what he wondered most was how long it had been since he had last heard such a beautiful voice seeking the path to God. His heart burned with joy. He moved closer to her, but Nara hesitated. saying she probably didn't smell good. Yunbin didn't mind in the slightest. In fact, he thought her scent was pleasant. Hearing that, Nara blushed even more, while Yunbin felt that, with all the intensity of the consecration, he was reaching his limit. More than anything, he was still sensitive to the warmth of her heart. At that moment, Nara felt as if she was on the verge of a divine revelation. Seeing the opportunity, Yunbin decided it was the perfect moment and quickly fetched some holy water to purify her. When Yunbin finally calmed himself, he noticed that Nara looked particularly radiant that day. Because of this, he approached her again and told her that he wanted to hold another ceremony, asking if she would be all right with it. In response, Nara embraced him and admitted that she, too, wished to find the path to God. She asked him to begin their prayers immediately. Here, Yunbin explains that his memory of what followed is unclear. Only fragmented moments remain. Without the need for words, the consecration consumed them. For no apparent reason, only faint voices and prayers could be heard, as if their minds had been overtaken by instinct, driven by a mutual desire to keep going. Amid it all, Yunbin purified Nara's soul once more, but despite that, he wished to continue praying, for both of them. The ceremony continued without interruption, something they had both already agreed upon. However, Yunbin had the intention of delving into Nara's mind, and with his chalice, he could see how her corrupted soul was being purified. For that reason, he used the holy water once again to help her find peace. Even after that, they continued their prayers. Despite ignoring Nara's reactions, Yunbin kept reading the Bible over and over. To regain some energy, he ate one of the pieces of bread she had set aside, but he never stopped reciting the verses. He was practically on autopilot. The ceremony progressed until he used the holy water again. However, even though Nara wanted to continue, Yunbin was exhausted and could no longer go on. A little while later, we see General lying on the bed while Nara rests. Meanwhile, Yunbin seems lost in thought, feeling that he may have overdone it. He wondered how he would be able to face Nara the next day since he never imagined a ceremony could feel so peaceful. Additionally, he had no idea how many times they had used the holy water. What struck him as most unusual was having his first ceremony with a girl slightly younger than him, especially because halfway through, his mind had gone blank. At that moment, Nara noticed Yunbin's silence and asked if she hadn't done well in her prayers. He was momentarily speechless, but instead asked if she had fallen asleep. Seeing that she didn't respond, he didn't want her to worry, as he felt everything had gone well. However, he was honest and admitted that he didn't know how to face her from now on. That was what was truly on his mind. Nara understood, even as Yunbin apologized, acknowledging that she needed to rest. Still, he wanted to tell her something. This had been his first ceremony, and by her side, he had felt a peace he had never known before. Just then, General arrived, meowing. Yunbin noticed her presence and apologized for forgetting about her. Nara, on the other hand, realized her kitten was hungry, so she asked Yunbin if he could give her something to eat. He nodded, though he couldn't help but wonder why the little cat was looking at him with such a mischievous expression. Even so, he expected her to follow him so he could feed her. Then, Nara decided to ask him something. Yunbin turned to look at her and noticed she seemed quite nervous. Finally, with a bit of hesitation, Nara asked if he wanted to stay the night.